Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for La Vuelta Stage 2. Sometimes you have to eat your greens before you have the main course or dessert, and that's sort of what this stage is, if we're being frank with you. It's just fine. What I don't like in cycling is what I think is a good parkour, is what I think some teams should be doing things exciting, and nothing happens. That's the worst.
Yeah.
Because you sit there, you're tuned in, you're watching. If you see this break go in this stage and you sit there and watch for 3 hours, I'm sorry. It's on you. Like, it's on you. Watch the last 10 Ks. So you can't be tricked. I'm happy not being tricked. But yeah, it's just another sprint stage, Benji. Olvega to Zaragoza. It starts at 1,000 meters, finishes at 200 meters. So they descend off the plateau. There's 2 rolling climbs in it. It even goes downhill for the first 30 Ks. There's an intermediate sprint with 20 Ks to go where there's bonus seconds plus sprint points, which, curious, they put them together. In the Giro, they're separated as 2 different sprint points. And then there's a flat sprint in the town of Zaragoza, or city rather. There's a big sweeper. It finishes on a slight left-hand, curving left-hand bend, but not braking, just a curve with about 200 meters to go. And yeah, there's a big left-hander with about a K to go as well, but enough time to move up position. So what do you think of this stage, Benji? Maybe a break?
It's going to be a filler episode the second that it started. And like when it started and we saw the breakaway form, it was a 2-man breakaway today. Evenepoel from Burgos BH and Abel Balderstone. His name is so English for a Spanish guy, so he must have some grandpa or grandma that's from the UK. But this dude was also in the breakaway, a 2-man breakaway, and we saw Alpecin control behind, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a day like that. I'm going to do some other stuff. I'm going to do my taxes or stuff like that. And I got started with doing my admin, and I had it on the background on TV, just so I could hear if something interesting happened. And nothing interesting happened until we got to the intermediate sprint. I swear I saw nothing for the first 130K of the stage, which is fine, which is good. Like you said, I wasn't watching fully anyway, so not like I tortured myself into that. But going towards the intermediate sprint, who do you expect to go for this? Because tomorrow's the Tourmalet stage. Are they going to be willing to spend a little bit of energy? Probably not too much to go for a sprint like this. It's a slightly downhill sprint. Will that affect the riders that go for it? Because like even Groves, his points before the stage when it comes to the actual green jersey points was 158 with roughly 79 points, double the points of Remco Evenepoel. And when I see that, I'm also like, does Groves even need to go for it anymore? Can you just save for the sprint because it's 19K from the finish line?
And he fully went for it this time too, not like the one where he just got on Remco's wheel. He properly gapped Roglic, so he really opened up the taps. Whether that made a difference, it also makes a difference, maybe not for him, but his team. His team have to accelerate. A lot of his riders who he needs in the lead-up, they have to do a lead-up before, whilst Rui Oliveira or Milano or DSM with Dainese, they're not doing anything. They're just chilling in the peloton. Whether that, they then have... Because then they got to fight for position, right? From 10Ks to go. So they only have 12 minutes recovery from the intermediate stretch. It's not that long to recover. Fit guys can do it, obviously, but yeah, it's... I was surprised to see them do a proper lead up for it. Maybe because he's going to come top 3 anyway, just by existing, like he did with the Remco one. So yeah, Balderstone, as you said, he looks Scottish. He's got all Irish.
He looks Scottish.
He's got red hair, really pale.
Stereotypes 101.
Well, I mean, man, the guy doesn't look Spanish and he's called Balderstone. I think I don't think it's too far back that he's not from the Castilian Empire. I think he's from the UK or Ireland. I don't work for Ancestry.com in my spare time, but I reckon we can guess. Anyway, those guys got cool. I mean, Yetzi Bowl, it's a pretty thankless task. Is it worth it?
I guess if you're a Burgos BH and Gacha, you might want to have your team plastered on TV for the limited amount of people that are still watching when this breakaway is on the road. But outside of just being an exposure breakaway, I don't really see the point necessarily, because like you also said, like, it's only the intermediate sprint with 19k to go, and by then you're probably caught already. So it's not like there's a K1 point somewhere where you can take some points or something like that. There's no real incentive to be in the breakaway outside of exposure breakaways. And I guess if you're a Spanish team, that can slip through the cracks, and that can be fine for those teams. But that's why we have a limited breakaway as well. And yeah, there was no real
Should other teams be trying harder? I mean, we don't watch break formation because it's not televised, so we don't know, but it's like the Tour of Britain. Should other teams be trying harder? They're not really given anything. There's nothing in the parkour.
Yeah.
It's just not enough. Like, they didn't put any climbs in at all.
I agree with that. And yes, Alpecin is going to try and control the breakaway formation phase, and then it depends on how many people you can get together to attack the peloton from all the other teams combined to be able to form a dangerous breakaway in the first place. And that's hard on a flat start, for example. And if you then think about the extra factor of having to cooperate with other teams without knowing whether they will actually do it. For example, I am Team A. Team A is interested in going in the breakaway because they don't necessarily have the fastest sprinter. I don't know what Team B, C, D, E, F, G, and H are doing on this stage. So I'm like, oh, we've got a B-Tech sprinter. Might as well go for him because I don't believe these other teams will go in the breakaway. Do you feel like teams are just not gambling enough on seeing whether other teams are willing to do the same?
Yeah, like, again, it's hard to say because we haven't seen the break formation. So maybe they are trying really hard. My guess would be the answer is no. They just decide that there's nothing in it, and it's well, maybe if it's the Tour they'd try, but then in the Tour everyone just was happy to work with Alpecin too. Maybe, I mean, for UAE it's different because they're not going to pull, and Milano has a chance. For
DSM, maybe.
I mean, yeah, maybe, but for every other team, you're not going to win the stage unless, I mean, you guess Jeffrey Soup won a sprint, so things can happen, but there's not the same corner in this parkour, so it should be one of the strongest sprinters winning. Anyway, we go into the sprint. To be honest, it looks like an absolute Alpecin clinic for the most part. Oh, yeah.
Did you specify Roglic taking 4 seconds and how that adds up in GC? Because how close is he now after those 4 seconds? Because
he is 23 seconds behind Evenepoel now. He was 27 seconds behind.
Okay, so that's a bit closer now. But
cool.
I feel like they did that lead out with Trotnik and Swerve. No credits to Kasper Pedersen there for Quickstep because he ended up failing to take away the seconds from Roglic while trying to do that sprint in that intermediate sprint. So instead of having Remco sprint for it, Quickstep basically said, Kasper, you're going to sprint to try and take seconds away from the competitive GC riders, and Roglic took it anyway. So that was a bit of a failure on that end. But it was pretty chaotic, that sprint. It was like a motorbike involved at a certain point because the motorbike was on the left side of the road. I don't know how close to the riders that was because once again, the TV director was amazing at their job to the point where it cut away from the intermediate sprint between like 800 meters to go and 150 meters to go. So you've got that moment of sitting there of like, are they actually going to miss the intermediate sprint again? Are they going to miss it again? And then finally they turned it back and we actually saw what happened, which was, like you mentioned, Groves, Roglic, and then third rider was Kasper Pedersen. Anyway, sprinting time. Sprinting time, and Alpecin is taking control into the sprint. They've got a solid amount of riders there. I feel like Trek was doing a good job keeping turns up there as well. I think Mosca was the rider that was trying to do that. Mosca even switched to doing the actual lead out ahead of Alpecin for a bit once turns had settled himself in the wheel of Groves as well. But UE was kind of missing. UE kind of got squashed backwards with a kilometer to go, I think.
Well, there was just this hectic fight for Groves' wheel, which makes sense. This reminded me a lot of when Cavendish was winning everything in the Tour in 21. And he said, if you want to beat me, you have to do your own lead out. You can't just sit on my wheel. And I think that's true. Yeah. If you just sit on Groves' wheel, like, you're not winning anyway, are you? If you just let him get the perfect lead out and then you try and beat him from his wheel, if you're Moran Vandenberg, you're going to beat Groves? Probably not. And
Milano could. Depends on the day.
Milano, maybe if Groves goes too early. They're close enough. But there was this huge fight on the left, Rui Oliveira said, and lots of elbows. Dainese, Vandenberg, huge fight, trying to get Edward Turns off Groves' wheel. And it looks like, when you're doing the numbers for Alpecin, I'm like, 700 meters to go, third last guy goes. Nice. 500 meters to go. Second last guy's still opening up. Roglic Reis doesn't have to jump until 400. He only has to do 225, and Groves is getting a perfect lead out round a bend at 175. He's going to win this easy. But what happens is, out of nowhere, Milano was ahead of Oliveira, lets Oliveira come back in front of him, opens the gap, and Oliveira initially builds momentum like the track rider that he is in the saddle.
From how far back?
Far. They were like 10th wheel. They were deep, and they were behind Dainese, Vandenberg, and turns, and comes up the open right side. I think he said the wind, they were a bit protected from the wind. I don't know exactly. And then he winds it up, gets level with Alpecin, but now he's already going quick from in the saddle as Robbie Reis is trying to get up to speed. And Reis, he's done some good lead-outs, but today he did not. Today he had no zip, and Oliveira does exactly what he should do, comes up, then starts doing a lead-out properly out of the saddle, sprinting, closes, like safely, but closes in front of Reis, plenty of space to do so. Groves is completely boxed because, Milano doesn't chop him, but the guy, I think Boy Van Poppel, following UAE, just bang, keeps Groves boxed in. There's probably a coming together, drops his chain as well. That doesn't help. But he dropped his chain because of this, not because he just dropped his chain. Yeah. And then, Oliveira does the perfect lead out around the bend, opens up the inside. Milano's the quickest guy not named Groves here and wins easily.
That's a victory for Milano. And we've seen him win a few stages in Grand Tours already, but this one was very much credited towards Rui Oliveira as well. The way he brought him up and in the final stretch, without Oliveira there, Milano's not competitive here.
Nope.
Let that be clear. And it reminded me of the Otto Van Poppel leadouts we've seen last year at the Vuelta, where Bora always had this thing where they would come up late with Ryan Mullen with Van Poppel, and then Van Poppel would do like an acceleration past everyone, and then we'd see Bennett launch from behind, and therefore basically the Van Poppel leadout would wave over the other leadouts that were already kind of towards the end of their leadout. And that's kind of what happened today. Robbie Reis was at the end of his leadout, and Oliveira just yodeled past him. And the thing about the other sprint is, like, Turns was in a position where he was semi-competitive this time, but I don't see him beating Groves and Milano head-to-head anyway. And Groves, I wasn't sure whether it was a chain issue or an unclipped issue when watching the footage, but that definitely hindered the sprint. Would it have changed the result? I don't think so. So I reckon the lead-up from Oliveira was actually golden today, but Dainese was also involved until like 400 meters to go, and this was a weird one. I want you to watch this if you didn't notice it, Patrick, in like in an hour or something. But Dainese in the sprint in the last kilometer was trying to move up on the left side of the Alpecin train with 500 meters to go, with 400 meters to go, and it's like he was trying to do so, then realized halfway through, oh, this is kind of dangerous, and then Turns kind of kept him behind him at the barrier side, and then Dainese is like, fuck this, I'm out, and just drops back and just does not compete in the sprint. It was super weird, but that's Dainese's story for today.
I'm watching now, and he's behind Cantor, and and it makes sense that he would give up on a lot of sprints because he doesn't get consistent placings. Yeah, like if he consistently tried all the way to the line against this field, he should be running top 10, even if he is in horrific position. And someone like Aular is actually consistently in better position, but he just has, obviously Dainese is much quicker. But when you look at the difference between Milano and Groves at the end, sure, Groves is coming quicker, but it's 3 bike lengths. So Dainese is a weird one. How will he go? How do you think Dainese will go after, where's he going? Q365 or Tudor?
Tudor. Jesus Christ, all these teams are the same.
I know. He's Tudor 2 years. I guess he's indeed got Zylard as the lead out. Is he better than Arvid Decline? Luke will say no. But maybe he'll go better there. I don't know. The thing is, like, it's probably a good thing for those teams to have an extra sprinter. I'm gonna guess that Dainese is not the most expensive rider in the world, even though they're probably paying for a Grand Tour stage winning rider. 2-0 wins, baby.
Yeah, and not a Vuelta stage win though in this one, that's for sure. But regardless of that, when it comes to the sprint, just pretty straightforward. Alpecin got overtaken by Milano's lead out by Oliveira. Milano wins, and that's that. And
but Groves still, he picked himself up off the floor, which is that's been the criticism of Ewan, right?
Yeah.
Ewan just gives up in that position, but Groves is going for the points as well. So he sprinted all the way for second, and he's got a 110-point lead on Milano over double his points, but Milano jumps up 12 positions after today's win.
Yeah, that's kind of it, no? What else can we say about the stage?
Just another sprint. Tomorrow's stage, the real interesting. So I don't mind having this sort of stage because tomorrow's stage should be a lot of action. Should be. Stage 13 from Formigal in Spain. They cross the Spanish-French border over the Puerto de Portalet, 4.4 Ks, 5.4%, a long HC climb descent into Lorient, which is where Hirschi won, which is where in 2020, which is where where Hindley won this year, where Jonas took time on Marie Blanc, but they don't do the Marie Blanc, they do the Col d'Aubisque, 16.6 K, 7%. These climbs will all be familiar to you Tour de France aficionados who maybe have continued on with us in the Vuelta. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Then short descent, false sort of little climb, 2 Ks, 5%. Then it continues on into Les Gonques. That's definitely not how to say it. Col de Spandel, also from the 2022 Tour de France, Category 1 climb, 10.4 Ks, 8.1%. So for reference, Aubisque will be 50 minutes probably, because they won't do it full gas, we think. And then Spandel is about 30 minutes, and it's a little bit steeper on average. Then the stepped descent on Spandel, that's the one before Altacam where Pogačar crashed and Vingegaard waited for him. Then a near 20k valley, including an intermediate sprint. There's a bonus gate on top of Spandel to encourage people to sprint and attack. And then the Col du Tourmalet, 18.8k, 7.4%. Pretty regular, but the last 2Ks are near enough 10% at over 2,000 meters. So very hard finish, very hard stage. That's all jam-packed in 135Ks. What's happening?
What's happening? To go into that, I feel like we need a quick reminder of the GC standings.
Yes.
Sepkus, 26 seconds ahead of Marc Soler from UAE, so one Jumbo rider already said. Then Evenepoel in third on 109. Roglic is now on 132 after the bonus seconds that he got, so a bit close towards Evenepoel. So that's a second Jumbo rider, but still a 23 seconds roughly behind Evenepoel. Lenny Martinez is in there, but I don't expect him to necessarily stay in that top 5. Joao Almeida is 6th on 216, so that's 44 seconds behind Roglic. Then Jonas Vingegaard is still there on 222. That's already a minute and 13 seconds behind Evenepoel. So that's the third Jumbo-Visma rider. 3 riders in the top 7. Juan Ayuso still there on 225. Enric Mas on 350. And I'll leave it at that for now. And I want to talk about Jumbo-Visma first. As in, they've got those 3 riders. So Sepkus in the lead, 136 down is Roglic, 222 down is Jonas Vingegaard. How do they play a stage like this? And there's 2 options here. Either you make it really hard and you go all out, which don't necessarily expect them to do it, but I hope them to do it. Which that scenario would go as followed. You look at this parkour, you see Portalet first, like little bump at the start of the road with the major descent afterwards. That's sure to have a breakaway formation already, establish a breakaway. So I don't expect the break to form in those 4 kilometers. I'd say maybe in the descent, some groups go, but I'd expect the actual break to form on the Aubisque. So that's number 1. If you do want to play with satellite riders, if you then put a rider in the breakaway and then you look at Spandel as a launching point, you've got only 40 kilometers from the bottom of Aubisque to the start of Spandel to let the gap of the breakaway grow substantially. And you need that to be substantial if you want to get your satellite rider to the top of Spandel where your GC leader might attack. So it's going to be hard, in my opinion, to establish a satellite rider with a solid enough gap to be able to get over the top of Spandel and help an attacking Jumbo leader in the valley that comes afterwards. What's your first take on that?
Yeah, I think you're right, because, okay, say break goes on that initial 4K. It's only a 10-minute climb. But then Hugh Carthy wants to be in that break.
Yeah.
Cal Brooks probably wants to be in that breakaway. Who else? Lenny? Like, if I look at the David de la Cruz, he wants to be in that breakaway. Steph Kras, Buitrago, Kemna, Rubio, all these fringe guys. And so, you know, and then Quickstep at Jumbo UAE, they're going to be like, because it's not like the Tour. Remember now, the Tour, Jonas and Pogačar beat the shit out of everyone so badly in stages 5 and 6 that there was huge gaps. but there actually isn't that big a gap to Vlasov in 10th. From Kuss, it's 3:14. From Roglic to Vlasov, it's 90 seconds. Whereas, so in the Tour, Jumbo could be like, I don't give a fuck if even the 5th guy on GC, who was 5th in GC?
I don't remember, my dude.
I don't know. Goes in the
I don't
breakaway.
even know who got 5th.
Well, no, Calderos. A great example, Calderos. Okay, that was a couple of stages later. What are we, stage 13 or stage 17? But stage 17, 4th got in the break. 6th got in the break. Like Yates, Simon Felipe, that is, Peyo Bilbao, David Gadu. Yama didn't care. And so it's different here. So that's an extended way of saying maybe break formation is a little bit trickier because they can't be so laissez-faire with who goes in it. And but will Vlasov want to jump? For sure, Carthy and De La Cruz and Adterbrook, Kras, Petrago should. And then you're right. But then who's going to pace the Obisque?
Then who's going to pace the Obisque? Well, the thing is like, Jumbo, if you got a satellite route in the breakaway, you don't want to pace Obisque. Because you want that gap to extend as much as possible before Spondel if you want to attack with a Vingegaard at the top of Spondel, for example. Because then you can have some action in the valley with your leader ahead, with a domestique. But they don't want anyone to pace there. So if I'm Quickstep and I see that Jumbo has a rider in the breakaway, I pace Obisque. Because I want the gap to be so little for Spondel that they can't use their satellite rider and do it that way.
Okay, so you're gonna burn Cataneo and Vavaka on the Obisque.
I don't think Cataneo and Vavaka already.
Well, you're not. Is there someone else I'm missing on their team that's going to pace quicker than a strong climbing breakaway on the Obisque?
Well,
did they bring Ilan? Carsten Pedersen, Seri, they're not going to go quicker than Petrago, man.
You need Cataneo for Spondel. That's 100%.
Yeah. So they got to hope Vavaka can do the whole of Obisque then. That's what I'm saying. I think they don't want to do that because you're opening up a can of worms there, aren't you?
Yeah, but I honestly believe that Jumbo won't even do what I've just said.
They won't pace the Obisque or they won't go in the break?
They won't necessarily go in the break.
Well, because Wilco's not looked so good. He looked better yesterday. So if Kuss can't pull on Tourmalet, and you have to use Valter on Spandel or something, and Wilco's no good, you effectively have no domestiques for Tourmalet. So you're right. It's like, will Jumbo just do a BS pace with Geesink on Obisque? Maybe. But that's why I think the break could establish itself reasonably well. Is it going to go all the way? I just don't see it. On a short stage like this, I know there's a 20k valley after Spandel, but there's no way the break can make it. There's no way.
A scenario that I see happening as well is like keeping it simple if you're Jumbo Visma. Like isolate the riders, the leaders of the opposing teams as much as possible on Spandel, and make sure you've got 3 leaders with something left, with a domestique left here or there over Spandel, hoping that other teams don't necessarily have that, or if it's just Cataneo or something, that it's very limited. And then on the last Tourmalet, just play the 3 leader cards. You don't necessarily need to do it on this Spondel already to blow the race open early, because I feel like the next stage, the stage 14 that we have, I feel like that's more the one where I'm like, ooh, that's like the raid stage that I'd go all out on, the Port de la Ro, whatever you call that, second last climb. That's the one where I'm like, put riders in the breakaway. It's got enough time to form a gap in between, and then you try and launch a leader towards that group, and then you see how that happens. But I feel like in this stage, it's also kind of the first time we get to the big mountain stage, no? As in, we have not seen a stage like this in this La Vuelta. And maybe Remco absolutely bottles it. Maybe Roglic bottles it out of nowhere. Maybe Vingegaard's not as good at the Tour de France at all, which I'm already guessing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that on these major mountain stages he's weak. So we haven't seen that difference. Maybe Jumbo loses one of their leaders tomorrow, and we don't know that yet. So that's also a possibility. And there's so many things where a team like Jumbo might still say, okay, let's see what happens on this stage. And then on the next stage, we can go all out for the victory if we see opportunities that arise. Because
Jumbo don't really, they don't really have to do anything tomorrow, do they? They got red.
Yeah. Well, they do have red, but if Gus shows any weakness, then their 2 other leaders are still behind Remco.
But not by much. And
That's
as we
true.
said before, so say Koos has a problem on Tourmalet, 5Ks to go. He's not full cracking, but Remco's stronger. Remco starts pacing. That means, and you said he should just do it, which is basically eat the punishment on one stage and try and knock Koos out. Say if he has to ride tempo, if Roglic is strong enough for 5Ks on Tourmalet, and then you got Bonies, you got the Roglic burst. That gap he has over Roglic could evaporate very fast. And that's the sacrifice to knock Koos out. So even if Jumbo do have a bad day and lose one of the leaders, I would expect at least one of them to really improve their position, because unless all three just are shit.
And also, let's say worst case scenario, GC Kuss disappears tomorrow, which I don't necessarily expect to happen.
See it.
I don't see it either, but worst case scenario that happens, then that doesn't necessarily mean they're in a shit position. That means that they can use Kuss in a different way on the stage afterwards, where they can go long on that second last climb. So I really believe that there's no need to go all out tomorrow, but they can if they believe that they can get a satellite rider far enough ahead before the foot of Spondale.
I mean, if Koos loses 2 minutes tomorrow, they still got to react to him if he attacks on the next stage on Aeromendi. Then he's 30 seconds behind Remco. You can't just let him go.
Yes, but
then UAE are more likely to chase.
Yeah, but I'd rather see their second leader in GC, for example, a Vingegaard, do it then instead of a Kuss, because otherwise they're just getting their pawns closer to the other riders in GC instead of trying to surpass them. That makes sense?
Yeah. I guess Roglic on long climbs on Bondone earlier this year, not as good. Turini,
about that,
yeah.
If we take a look at the season, Tirreno, it's difficult to say because Roglic started the season on the back foot. He had a bad preparation into the season, got to Tirreno, even though he wasn't necessarily supposed to ride that because his recovery was going okay, and then he started on the mountain stage was headwind. He would never have won Tirreno, in my opinion, if that didn't get shortened, plus if the headwind wasn't there, because he was getting dropped on that climb and he came back because of the headwind, and because he's fucking clever, he ended up winning that race because he just plays it better than everybody else did. But regardless of that, he won the race, so credits to him, and he won quite a few stages in that race. But then Catalunya, for example, we see him having a weaker day on La Molina, which from that race is the stage with the most energy expenditure. Then in the Giro Montebologna, you mentioned it, that was also the stage with the majority of energy expenditure, I'd say. But I do kind of feel like that is not necessarily valid data because of the fact that he came back from injury. We don't know. It's impossible to know whether Roglic is actually weaker on energy expenditure or whether he was just that because he was injured at the start of the season.
Well, there is a myth of peak Roglic, right? If he was, it's a myth of peak Roglic. Like, because always he's either had a bad prep or a crash or something like that. And so you're always looking for there are these outliers, like 2020 Col de la Loze in the Tour.
Yep.
He was stronger than Pogacar. And that was, of course, like a very hard stage and a super long climb. And then Covadonga, he went with Bernal on Collar de Omena. So you're always looking for that peak Roglic, but then sometimes you can get Paris stage 8 Roglic where the elbows get flared out and all of a sudden, oh no, you're not going anywhere. So hard to say. I actually don't expect him to have a problem tomorrow. 135k stage, he looks really good. But he has looked really good in the past, dominant, like Paris 2021, or no, he crashed there. What's a better example?
What example are you looking for?
Paris 2022 looks so dominant. Then the last stage, all of a sudden, what the fuck? He's getting dropped by Simon Yates, nearly lost the race. So you never know.
In Bondone, in Angliru, in that one Vuelta, the days that he had his weaknesses, who was there to save his ass? Sepp Kuss by his side.
Yeah.
If that happens tomorrow, Sepp Kuss ain't waiting for Roglic.
No, can't wait for him.
So that's also like a thing that I reckon that probably doesn't play with him mentally until the moment happens, but he won't have that extra support when he does collapse on the final climb. Or do we expect Vingegaard to do that? I don't expect it yet. He's too close yet.
What do you think the GC standings look like tomorrow? Is Koo still in? First question: is Koo still in red?
Yes.
Is Soler still in second?
I reckon yes.
I think no.
You think no?
Is Evenepoel still ahead of all the quote-unquote GC favourites?
That's a very difficult one. I say yes, but I think his lead will diminish.
I think no.
Ooh.
Who is strongest of the two UAE main leaders?
Almeida.
Almeida?
Yes.
Is that because of USO crash?
No, I've just jumped ship. I'm now flirting
You
with the
jumped ship
Portuguese
to
Armada
Almeida.
again. Yes. Sorry, Spain. I'm out.
You mean that top 5 defensive merchant?
Yeah. I also believe that Tourmalet is steady enough for him to be able to do what he does.
It is a nice climb for him.
So I'm in the Almeida camp again. Sorry, Uzo. Goodbye, my friend.
Okay. I'm going to pick Enric Mas to win this stage.
Ooh.
I
actually believe he'll be good.
Yeah, he obviously dog shit TT, what's new, but if we take a look at Joret de Cati, 4th, yeah, it's fine, but he lost positions on the descent. He was with the Evenepoel Roglic. Where did he come on on Havalambre? He cracked himself, didn't he? I think
he cracked.
True, I don't like that. But on the long climbs, I think he can be good. He's hot. I had a working theory before that he's not good on the long climbs. Then he is good on some of them. Like the Tour de France 2021, he came 4th on one, and on Portet the day before, he sucked. And Ardennes, he was good. Ardennes. So I don't really know.
And the working theory is dead now.
Yeah, I just think who knows what could happen. So I like Mas. I think Mas will have a good day. I think he'll move up GC positions for sure. But I'll just pick him as a big wild card to win the stage. And I think Koos keeps red. Soler drops down, and I don't know about. I think UAE. They'll be passive. There's no way without Vine. How can they be aggressive?
I don't see it. I don't see them being active at all, and that's also kind of in the blood of UAE because they're gonna be that team that towards the end of the Grand Tour will try. If they are not within reach of the overall victory, they won't try anything crazy. They'll just.
I think that's already now.
Yeah, I think that's currently unless they somehow find a way to better their position where they're fighting for overall, as in a user has a glorious day and comes back like 1 minute towards everybody else, then they can talk about doing a crazy strategy in stage 20 or something to go absolute YOLO. But until then, there's just defensive mode until the finals, see how much you can survive with the other GC riders, and if you're better than them, try and drop them by the end. And that's going to be the strategy for Almeida, for Ayuso, and for Soler, I think, as well. So I don't see them using Soler necessarily in the same way they did in Arinsal, for example. Maybe he thinks Soler might think, okay, maybe I'm still not marked as much, so maybe he will try at some point on Tourmalet, but I don't see that necessarily as being a long go. But what I see here is that Quickstep's basically dependent on how Jumbo rides the race and needs to be reactive to how that happens. And there is no good answer on the way they do that, I reckon, because they don't have the all-out strong team. So if Jumbo's in the breakaway, you either put riders in the breakaway as well and hope that that can benefit you that way. Because, like, let's say someone attacks. Let's say they do that satellite rider trick. You see Vingegaard attacking at the top of Spondale towards a breakaway where, I don't fucking know, Trotnik's there for some reason. So you've got that duo up there. Cataneo's in the breakaway for Quickstep. Remco joins. If Remco joins Vingegaard in that attack, Roglic has to be in the wheel as well. So that just ruins everything of that plan. So the second that Remco responds to Vingegaard, then Roglic would have to roll attack and try the same, or Kuz, and like, does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's more, if you're Remco and you had Casaneo ahead, you probably would just let Jonas dangle. You do what you did on Jarret de Cati because you have a rider in front of you, so you just let him dangle.
Yeah,
and
but it's Jonas though. It's not Kuz.
Yeah,
so I reckon
it's a 20k valley. Like,
unless Jonas can make it to Trotnik up front.
But fuck, like, even
if he makes
so,
it, I wouldn't want him to make it to Trotnik. I won't lie.
He has to hold Tourmalet himself.
It's Vingegaard. The dude just won the Tour de France. Sorry, but we got to give the guy some credit.
No, he's washed. Sepp Kuss is my new overlord.
17 Danish fans just died.
No, he's not washed. He hasn't had the best stage for him yet, and that's tomorrow. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And as you say, of course, if Vingegaard is moving on a stage like this, you have to take it very, very seriously, no matter what's happened before. And he's 6 seconds behind Almeida. I'm very interested to see what UAE do, like how defensive they are. Whether Ayuso and Almeida work together. We have seen them caught behind on Sierra Nevada last year, where they don't pull, and they sat whilst Carapaz pulled Carlos Rodriguez. Am I correct in remembering it was Carapaz who dropped back from the breakaway? And they didn't pull.
Almeida will always pull.
Because he needs it. Actually, they attacked Rodriguez one by one. That wasn't too bad in the end, but yeah, I'm interested to see how UAE, how defensive they are. I think they really will just go for points, and I'm not sure whether they believe they can win this Vuelta. But the winner of tomorrow will be, if the GC standings do not change at all, I think Remco will be the happiest of anybody. This is like
definitely.
This is like a box to tick to just get through this, because there's 3 Jumbo climbing leaders all near you, some ahead of you. And it could be carnage tomorrow. Hopefully it is. I think it could be a spectacle. Do we have full coverage? Do we know? Or close to full coverage? Please say yes.
I can say yes, but I'm not sure if I'm right. As in, I don't know. But I kind of reckon I feel like an Almeida show coming tomorrow. As in, that Almeida
that bullshit attack on the neutralized stage 9 got you with Vlasov.
The time trial did, actually.
The time trial was very good.
The time trial was really fucking good. And
yeah.
Like, maybe he's growing into this race, but I reckon all the riders are kind of hoping to do that. Even Vingegaard with his limited prep is probably hoping to grow into the race a tiny bit, unless he's trying to survive from the form he still has from Tour de France, which I doubt that's the case. I reckon it's more the other scenario. But I don't know, man. It's like so many scenarios can happen. And
wait, who do you think wins the stage? I picked Mas, Enrique Mas.
Almeida? I don't know. Maybe? Is that a yes?
Fair enough.
Okay.
Maybe. Actually, I didn't hear. My internet dropped out. I was trying not break the fourth. I was trying to not break the fourth wall. But who actually did you pick? You can change it now. I won't even know.
I picked
Almeida.
I picked Roglic.
Oh, come on, long climb.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Okay. Tomorrow, full coverage apparently starts at 1:30. So I don't know if that is full coverage, but hopefully it is. Let me just check exactly. It is full coverage. So wow, full coverage. You get to see break formation. I feel yay.
Ooh la la.
Very, very happy. I think it's gonna be a cracker. I can't wait to tune in. Hope you enjoyed this podcast, which is mainly a preview of tomorrow's stage. There's a lot about today's stage, and yeah, we'll see you with that cracking recap with surely some big GC gaps tomorrow. Until then. Ciao.